Video is for the apply color assignment. So we're going to need to pull a couple of different projects that you've already completed together to be able to complete this assignment. You're going to need your color swatches that you created for the Explore color, and then your patterns that you created for the Apply Patterns assignment. If you don't have those to be able to pull into here, you can use some pre-made files. If you go to Files in Canvas and go to Apply Files, and then Prepared Files, then you'll be able to see this Swatch Exchange file and this pattern file, and you can download those and use those for this assignment. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new Adobe Illustrator document with 4 artboards that are 8 inches by 8 inches. And so my default has shown up as 8 inches by 8 inches. I've got 4 artboards, and I'm going to hit Create. Now, one of the first things that I'm going to do after I get this created is I want to import this Swatch Exchange file. But one thing that's going to help you as you start to apply these colors to your patterns are to get rid of these default swatches. Now, if you don't see your swatches file, I'm going to pop it back in here so you can see what it looks like. It looks like some little squares of swatches, and so if I click on that, I'm going to pull it back out here so it's floating. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually delete all these default ones that are in here. So I can delete those, and I want to keep black and keep white, but I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select all of those swatches, and then I'm going to hit the little trash can here, and it's going to ask me if I want to delete the swatches, and I'm going to say yes. And so what you want to do is you want your document to look like your swatches before we import this Swatch Exchange file. So now what we're going to do in this upper right hand corner, we're going to go Open Swatch Library, and at the very bottom of this there is another library, and I'm going to find that Swatch Exchange file, and mine's on my desktop, and I'm going to select it, hit Open, and it's going to bring up another window here called Color Swatches. That's what mine's named, and yours might look a little bit different depending on how you organized it. I've organized mine in folders that are all based on that basic color, and then I've got my tints and my shades in those folders. So that way I can keep track of what my swatches look like. Okay, so now that I've got these swatches that I've loaded and I've got these swatches deleted, I'm going to create 3 rows of 5 1-inch squares on each artboard. So I'm going to get my rectangle tool. I'm going to click once, and I want them to be 1 inch by 1 inch. And I'm not going to fill them with anything. We can leave a black outline on it. And then I'm going to copy this. I'm holding Option, and I'm clicking and dragging. And I'm going to hold the Shift key down so it maintains it in that straight line. And then Command D, or Transform again, to duplicate it over. So now I've got 5 squares, and then I'm going to duplicate these down, holding Shift and Option, and then Command D to duplicate it again. And then we want to make sure that these are kind of centered in that artboard. And then we're going to put some on this next artboard, and I'm going to actually copy all of these at the same time. So now I've got my my boxes prepared for my color schemes that we're going to start to build. So I'm going to save this document. We'll call it Color Apply, something like that, so you know what your document is. You can name it whatever you'd like. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a monochromatic color scheme. And so if you notice, there's a monochromatic color scheme, a complementary, analogous, and a triadic color scheme. Now, you can review those color schemes in the book, but I also can go over them a little bit just to kind of remind you. So here's a color wheel, and in this color wheel we've got our primary colors, which we're used to: red, yellow, and blue. Now, if we think about what a secondary color would be, a secondary color is a color that is a mixture of one of your primary colors, so red, yellow, and blue. So red and blue becomes violet or purple, red and yellow becomes orange. Hopefully this is familiar to you. Now, when we start talking about what a monochromatic color scheme is, A monochromatic color scheme is one color or hue and its tints, which if you remember are white as you created in your Explore file. So it's that hue or color and it's got white added to it, or shades and black. So anything that would be in this little pie slice would be monochromatic. So what you don't want to do is choose this color and one from this slice. It has to be the same hue or color and tints and shades of that color. Now, a complementary color scheme are colors that are crossed from each other on the color wheel. So the most familiar are probably red and green, or purple and yellow, orange and blue. And so you're going to create a complementary color scheme using two of those colors and that are crossed from each other on the color wheel. And it's in this instance, it's okay to actually go a step over. So you could go blue and orange, or you could go blue and red, orange, something like that. And then what you can do is, if you notice we've got 5 boxes here, what you can do is you can add tints and shades of those colors as part of this color scheme. Now, so that's complementary color. Now, analogous colors are colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel. So they're next to each other. So you could choose blue and green, or you could choose blue and purple, maybe it's purple and red, something like that, and then use tints and shades of those. Now, triadic colors are a part of these tertiary colors. So what you can do is you can choose 3 colors that are across from each other in the color wheel. So maybe you use red and blue and yellow, or if you rotate around that color wheel, you could do red, violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, or you could do this violet or purple, green, and orange. And so that's actually adding 3 different colors to your color scheme. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this very first one, which is the monochromatic. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Now, once we start to pick these colors, if I select them in these swatches, they're going to actually be added to this swatch palette right here. So I'm going to choose this first box, and I think I'm going to do a monochromatic color scheme that is, perhaps maybe we'll use one of these purple colors. And so I can use that main color. And because I've got mine organized in this fashion, what I can do is I can actually just go along this row and pick from all of these colors in this color scheme. So now I've got a monochromatic color scheme using those purples. And if you look at the names of these as we go across here, because of the way I've built this, all of these different colors actually are built of 50 cyan, 100 magenta, and then it's a variation of white, so 60%, and then we've got the addition of some black. So now I'm going to build another color scheme. So I'm going to we'll do this green right here, and I'm going to use everything in this row. And again, your swatches may look a little bit different because of how you built them, but you want to make sure you're using the exact same hue or color. And then I'm going to use, I think we'll use this orange color. So I've got that. I'm going to save that. So now I've got 3 monochromatic color schemes. Now, complementary colors, if you remember, they're across from each other on the color wheel. So I know that purple and yellow are complementary colors. So I'm going to start here with these yellows. And I'm going to choose a few of those, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to choose some purple. And they don't have to be exactly across from each other. You can go one step to the side, and you can decide, but you've got to make sure that they're just the exact same color. So I'm using these yellows and these purples. So now I've got one complementary color scheme. I'm going to do another one that is an orange and a blue. So we're going to go oranges all in the same color, and then we'll go blue. So now I've got another complementary color scheme, and I'm going to do a third one, which is kind of the traditional red and green. So choose a couple of colors there, and then we'll go with this green right here. And if you notice, I'm just using tints and shades of those same colors. So now I've got my complementary colors. Now we're going to do analogous, which if you remember, they're adjacent to each other or next to each other. So this first one, I'm going to do some blues and greens. So we're going to do in this same, let's see where we're at here. We're going to do it in this same row. And that one I'm not a super big fan of, so we're going to actually go a little bit lighter. Gotta make sure I'm in the same row of colors. Okay, so now we're gonna do, actually I'm gonna do another analogous color scheme that are using different greens and different blues. So we're gonna actually go a little bit more of this kind of olive green. Choose some of these colors. And then we're gonna choose actually maybe this same blue. Okay, and then one more, perhaps I'll use reds and oranges. So we're going to use these reds. And then we'll go to orange here. Okay, so now I've got my analogous color schemes. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to do our triadic. So one triad would be red, yellow, blue. So we're going to do that. Choose maybe a couple of reds. We'll choose one yellow here. And maybe we'll do a couple of blues. Now, another one would perhaps be orange and green and purple. So we're going to do orange. Maybe we'll do two greens here. And then we'll do a couple of purple. Okay, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll do an additional red, yellow, blue, and we'll add some different yellows. So we'll go with this brighter yellow. And then we'll use maybe these darker reds, and then we'll add one blue in here. So now we've got our triadic color schemes. So I'm going to save this. Now we've got our color schemes, and we're going to add our patterns here, and we're going to start to apply these color schemes to our patterns. Now, what we've got to do is we've got to open our pattern file, and you'll use yours, and you may decide that you don't like your patterns, or you might want to adjust them after you start to apply the colors to them. That's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create an actual pattern swatch, because right now these are individual shapes, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn this pattern that you've created into a swatch in your swatches over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my entire artboard that has my entire pattern, and I'm going to simply click and drag that into my swatches. So now if you notice, there is it looks kind of like a checkerboard, but that's actually this pattern as a swatch. And I'm going to do kind of a cheater way to do it, but it's perfectly legit. I'm just going to create a box or a rectangle, and I'm going to fill it with that pattern. And I'm going to take that box and I'm going to copy it. So Command C or Edit Copy. Go back to my apply, and I'm going to paste it into this document. Now, if you notice, it actually showed up here in my swatches. So now that I've got this in my swatches, I'm going to actually delete that, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a row of 3 2-inch by 2-inch squares, and hopefully, if you haven't guessed, we're going to apply these colors to these patterns. So I'm going to make one here. So let's see, did I make it the right size? Got to double check. Yep, 2 inches by 2 inches. And we're going to put 3 of them here. And actually, I'm just going to delete those two right now. We're going to focus on one of them. So we've got this first box, and what we can do is we can actually modify our pattern after we have it in our swatches. And so the way you modify that pattern is you want to double click on it, and if you notice, it brings up a duplication of that pattern. Now inside this area is the actual pattern area, and it's actually duplicating it 3 by 3, and so this dialog box should show up, and you can see that it copies it. Now one thing you might want to do is change this so it shows 1 by 1 so that you don't have to worry about how it overlaps, or you may want to go back and see how these corners connect. And I'm not expecting it to be perfect. I want you just to explore and experiment with the patterns to see how it works and how you can apply those colors. So what we're going to want to do is, if yours are grouped, you may need to use your direct selection arrow, which is the white arrow, to individually select those shapes. Or if yours aren't grouped, you can maybe use your regular selection tool. But what we're going to do is we're going to start to take these shapes and apply our colors. So we've got our monochromatic color schemes, and I'm actually going to sort this by a list view so we can see what those names are and make sure we're working in our color schemes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these swatches, or these shapes, and we're going to start to add our monochromatic color scheme. And the reason these change color are because it's showing that repetition. So I'm going to find a few places and add this color to it. And maybe I'll go this direction and add a darker color to it. And maybe I want to go here and add this additional color. Okay, and then it looks like that's one of my other colors, I think, right here. Nope, that's 50. So what we want to do is so I can find what that other color is, I'm going to actually go back out. So what you need to make sure and do is, before you go, you have to come up here to the top and hit done. And you can see that it started to add these colors to this swatch. Now I'm going to go up here and make sure I see where all those colors are. Looks like I'm missing this one swatch right here, and so what I'm going to do is a 20% of that color. I'm going to click and drag that in there so I can see that swatch and make sure I've got this one, the 80%, and drag it in here so I know that these are the ones that are a part of this color scheme. Another way you could do it is how I've got them organized here, is I've got these all here. They're lined up right here. I can select all of those, hit shift, and I can create a folder, and maybe we call this purple monochromatic. This isn't necessary if you can keep track of it. Sometimes I like to keep things organized so I can keep track of it. Now I know that those are my purple monochromatic, and I'm going to add this one to this swatch and this one. So now I've got my swatches here, and I'm going to select those and add them green monochromatic. Actually, that's not what I want to do. I want to make a folder. Yep, that's right. Green monochromatic, if I can spell. CH. I cannot spell. Chromatic. Okay, so now I've got that, and then we've got our oranges. Let's make sure we've got our oranges in here. So I've got all 5 of those colors, and it looks like what's happening is when we clicked on it to add them to here, the ones that were tints, which are a percentage of the color, didn't add, so those are the ones you're going to have to click and drag in. So I'm going to hit that, and we'll call orange monochromatic. Okay, did a better job that time. So now I've got these. So I'm going to go back to this pattern. Now I can't see very much of my pattern. And so what we are going to want to do is perhaps adjust that a little bit more. So I'm going to double click on this pattern and I'm going to back out again. Now, if you notice the relationship of these to my artboard back here is I'm going to actually select these and I'm going to shrink these. I'm going to hold Shift and drag them in. And then if you notice there's all this space between this and the repetition, what you need to do is you need to click this little area right here where it says Size Tile to Art. And if you notice it snaps back in and it starts to tile it like it should. And then I'm going to hit Done. And if you notice there's more of my pattern in my swatch here. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to save now because I've done some organization here. Now I'm going to double click back on it and I can go back and I can start to change some of these other colors now that I've got these organized, and I probably want to do these dark so that I match what I've got going on with my original pattern. And again, like I said, if you feel like you want to change your pattern because you start to notice something that might look a little bit better, that's totally up to you. That's your call how you want to adjust things. This is just to explore how the patterns work. So let's make sure I get all of these black ones changed to a different color. Looks like there's some black ones here. Looks like I've got one more here. We'll make it that color. And then we've got the grays here, and I'm going to change these grays to some of my lighter colors so it stays true to my original pattern. Kind of makes you go a little bit cross-eyed here, but let's see, we're going to go back, zoom in here a little bit. I'm just holding the Shift key down to select the ones I want to select all at the same time so you don't have to change each individual one. And we'll go here to the gray. Looks like I missed one right there. So it's going to take a little bit of time for you to select depending on how complicated your pattern is. So we'll select this. And we've got that one selected. And then I hit save, and if you backed out, so we can see that we're starting to get that pattern created. So it looks like I've got a few more gray to do, so I'm going to double click on this one more time and go back in and select some of these grays. And now if you get enough of them selected that you can you might want to make a global change. What I can do is I can go over here into my swatches and I can use my magic wand tool and I can click and it'll select all the things that are that same color, and then I can convert them all at the same time. Maybe we want them to be lighter here. Looks like I've got another black there. We're going to make that a dark one. So now you can see I've converted all my shapes to the colors that are in my monochromatic color scheme. So we're gonna change that one, and then we're gonna hit done here, and now I've got my pattern. And I hit save again. Now, one other thing that you might notice that's a little bit weird is when I go and I move it around, it's gonna follow that pattern. The pattern is almost like it's stuck to the artboard. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move my square to where I want it to match up to the pattern. And I'm going to leave that there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object, Transform, Move. And what we're going to do is if you see Transform Patterns right here, we're going to click on that and hit OK. And now if you see when I move it around, the pattern stays in relationship to that square. Now, if you decide you want to edit that, you can still go back to Object, Transform, Move, and uncheck that, and then you can move this around and adjust where you want it in relationship to this pattern. And you'll find that if your pattern isn't quite repeating how you want, you might want to adjust some of those elements on the edge. So I've got to find where my edges are here. So I think something like that might make sense. And I'm going to go back up here and go to transform, move, transform patterns. Okay, so now it's going to stay that way. So now I've got my first one, and I'm going to actually copy this, and we're going to create our second one with our greens. Now we've got our pattern right here, and maybe I want to name this purple monochromatic so that we know what that is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this one and we're going to start to edit it again. And we're going to go in here and we're going to select these different elements. And we're going to start to add our greens. Now the important thing to remember is that we don't want to save over our pattern that we had with our greens, or with our purple, with our new pattern. And so when we're done adjusting this pattern, you need to make sure and hit save a copy instead. And we're going to call this green monochromatic. And actually we probably, let's see, yep, I've got it right here, green monochromatic, and then we can hit done. Actually, let's see what happened here. It's probably because of the way I named it. So we're going to hit save a copy. Let's see, green monochromatic pattern. I think it's because I named it the same as this folder. Okay, so it looks like it's going to make it to the original one. So we've got to go back here and apply. What's going on here? Hold on, I've got to back out and figure out what I've got going on here. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to copy that pattern first and call it green monochromatic. So instead of editing the original one, we're going to make a copy by clicking on this tab right here. And then we're going to edit this pattern. So we're not actually editing our original pattern, and hit done. So now you can see we've started to get some of our green squares. So go back in here. And we're going to select some of these other shapes. And we want to go a little bit darker with those ones. We'll get enough of them changed so you can see how they are starting to modify these patterns. Okay, and then I'm going to hit done. And so now you can start to see I'm starting to build my green pattern. Now you don't have to use the exact same patterns for all of them. What I want you to do is to have 3 different patterns, one with each of these color schemes applied. And then you're going to do the same for your complementary colors, and for your analogous colors, and your triadic colors. And so you can pick some of the different patterns. So if you look, this pattern's a little bit more simple. This one's actually pretty complicated, but I would do the same thing. I would take this and I would drag it into my patterns, create a new swatch, and apply that pattern to the swatch. I'm going to copy that, Command C, go back to this document and apply it or paste it. And I'm going to delete that, and I can actually drag this box and apply that new pattern. And then I can double click on this, and then I can go and I can start to add my new colors that are a part of that color scheme and hit done. Actually, I didn't get enough of those selected because of how big it is. So we'll get more of these selected. Make sure I've got the right color here. Maybe these are the darker color. And then if I hit done, you can start to see that pattern be adjusted. I'm gonna reduce the size of this shape here. Make sure and hit size tile to art, then hit done, and you can start to see I've got another pattern. Looks like I pulled some colors from this other color scheme. So again, it's not about whether your pattern looks perfect. It's about applying the colors to that pattern and exploring the color and the pattern in relationship to each other. And then once you've completed the assignment, what I want you to do is I want you to save your document and make sure you save an AI file of it. And then you're going to save a press quality PDF, and the PDF is what you're going to upload to Canvas. Hopefully this has been helpful to you, and if you run into weird little things, feel free to reach out and email either me or one of the other professors. And good luck.